I had an email from one of you guys with a shocking discovery, which may be too obvious to spot at first, but is certainly something that you'll want to bear in mind in future. But first of all, if you're new to my channel, I'm Daniel Shensmith, a barrister of England and Wales. I enjoy helping you to understand law, so please do hit that subscribe button if you find this content useful. I wouldn't expect you to do so otherwise. So this email, by maintaining the anonymity of the person who sent it to me, does raise a very serious question about when you phone a company and they record your phone call. Now, this email details how, through a Freedom of Information request, they received, eventually, all recorded telephone conversations that this person had with the local authority with which they were having conversations. And as it says, in a very roundabout way, they were eventually sent these recordings, and as with many large corporations and organizations, when you call them, you are invariably put in a queue. You're put on hold. This writer said that they were put on hold for 15 to 20 minutes while the call was waiting for an agent to answer. There was some sort of preamble at the beginning about calls may be recorded for quality and training purposes and so on, which is perfectly normal. Now, whilst I say it might be too obvious at first, yes, you might well understand from that preamble that your call is being recorded for quality and training purposes. Not sure what the quality purposes are, but hey, the call is henceforth being recorded. Now, this writer said rather than put the phone to their ear, they put it on speakerphone because the technology has improved somewhat these days. That's exactly what I do. I almost never, in fact, hold a phone to my ear anymore. I almost always have it on loudspeaker or even through my computer speakers and the microphone like this. But back to the voice recording. This recording came along, and in somewhat disbelief to this writer, this call recording had 15 minutes of the waiting time all recorded, which obviously raised several concerns. Not only could this have recorded any kind of private conversation, which was taking place whilst they were on hold, because presumably it shouldn't have been necessary to record any of the sound coming through the phone whilst they're on hold. It wasn't a conversation with the agent, after all, not by that point at least. This conversation could have had anything to do with medical information, could have had anything to do with banking information. These are all the concerns raised by this writer in this email. These conversations could have included any sort of banking details, account numbers, sort code, if they were providing these to somebody else, if they were doing something else whilst they're on hold. Because I don't know about you, but I don't just sit there on hold waiting for the person to answer. Invariably, I'll be on hold and I'll do something else whilst I'm on hold. I will be doing some other kind of work, potentially having some other kind of conversations. Now, obviously, as a lawyer, I don't do that. I wouldn't risk any client information by doing anything other than just that client work. I wouldn't have any kind of risk bleeding in to the situation that I'm in. But most people would probably assume that that bit of the recording is not recorded. Now, whilst the preamble said calls are recorded for quality and training purposes, the call actually applies, at least in this case, to the entirety of that call, including the waiting period. Now, if the idea of your call being recorded and your data being stored somewhere is somewhat of a concern to you, imagine now that your information and your data is not just stored, but it's somehow compromised or sold on to another party as marketing information. Remember, some companies do say that they share your information with marketers that they believe might provide you with useful services. In that case, your information might be sold on to marketing companies that, believe it or not, package you up as a product to sell. That is where there is a service that I can recommend to you called Incogni, which will help to remove your information from their databases. Because there are companies out there that sole purpose is to market you and to sell you. Because believe it or not, there are hundreds of different data marketers out there that gather your information together and sell your information to the highest bidder. Not only that, if your information then gets passed on to a bad actor, even if they are someone that is buying your information initially as a genuine purchase, then they can then piece together you just like a jigsaw puzzle and get all of your information put together, find out everything they can about you. Ultimately, then they can try to impersonate you. We've had many different clients come to us and had their identity stolen, and they've ended up with mobile phone contracts and loans and all sorts of other things taken out in their name that they then end up fighting, sometimes in court, because the lender believes that they are responsible for the debt or the contract. So how does Incogni come in and how does it help you in this situation? Well, Incogni is a service that when you sign up with the link in the description below, with a discount of course, they will contact each of these data marketing companies and insist that your data is deleted in accordance with data protection legislation. This applies to all of the local authorities and private companies, and unless there is a legitimate reason for them to hold on to your information, they are required to delete it in accordance with your data protection rights. If you were to try to contact each of these hundreds of companies that are selling on your information, you might struggle to do so. You might even struggle to know who they are. So why not let Incogni do all of the work for you with the link in the description below. I've used it myself, so I can vouch for it working. I've seen dozens and dozens of companies confirming that they've removed all of my information from their databases. So once again, the link for that is in the description below. Why not try it out? Now, some of the questions that do crop up from a lawyer's perspective in this situation is that data protection should have a minimalist approach in that the data collected, stored, processed, shared should only be as much as is necessary for the purpose for which it was collected in the first place. Therefore, they should only really be recording the bit that is relevant. Now, I would firmly argue that the only bit of this call that is relevant is the bit with the agent, not beforehand, not whilst they're on hold, not whilst you are on hold. Think of the companies and the organizations and the local authorities and any company with whom you will have a conversation that will be recorded, and everything you do and say before the agent picks up the call, eventually, which might be 40 minutes or so. Even courts, when you're calling a court. Even as I check on the website right now with HMCTS, His Majesty's Court and Tribunals Service, it says here on the website on gov.uk that it operates a network of courts and tribunal service centres that deal with aspects of court and tribunal cases in several jurisdictions, etc. When you contact the court and tribunal service centres, the CTSCs, we may also record telephone calls as well as keep a record of web chats, emails, and web forms. Now, this might obviously mean, particularly if you are a litigant in person calling the court services, the court contact service centres, if you are a litigant in person, either the claimant or the defendant, you might be having conversations with whoever about your case because it's on your mind. You might be having conversations about that case whilst you're on hold to the court's service, trying to, let's say, find out when the case is listed, whether they've received your documents, whatever it might be you're calling the court for. But whilst all of that is in your head, you might be talking about it with someone next to you, you might be complaining about it, and let's just say that there was a mistake in any kind of data release, or there was a hack of some kind, or let's say the other side put in a freedom of information request for a copy of their phone calls, but they were mistakenly sent the wrong phone call. That could then be a significant and very serious breach of data protection. I'm not saying for a moment that HMCTS and the CTSCs would do so. I would think, and I would certainly hope, that they have more security measures in place to prevent that from happening. But with the best will in the world, mistakes happen. Usually human mistakes, but very often system and technology mistakes as well. We've all known that there's been a significant number of data breaches over the years. And in this particular scenario, this is not entirely impossible that somebody could be sent the wrong call recording with someone having a conversation about their own case. Potentially the most devastating aspect of their own case that they wouldn't like to share with anyone else, much less the other side. So you can see where my thoughts go with this. And the same goes for any kind of call recording that you might have with a company and an organization. If your call's recorded, it's stored somewhere. Now, it might be encrypted, and there's all sorts of conversations we can have about encryption. I've been having some myself just recently, which I'll tell you about in another video perhaps. And this does open the door for potential problems. So next time you're on a call and you're put on hold, bear in mind that everything you say whilst you're on hold, your call silence portion might well also be recorded. So this was the concern of one of you, my viewers. So hopefully I've addressed that there. I think there are potential data breaches just by recording the portion of the call that is not necessary, because data protection incorporates data minimization, as in only as much as is needed and only for as long as is needed and only for the purpose that it was collected for to begin with. So if you have similar concerns like that, let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you think about this one. Did you realize that all of your silent portions whilst you're on hold are being recorded? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.